into a generation about purpose-driven either economy or purpose-driven life, where every individual would be aspired to follow a purpose in their life, be it corporate or be it individual. And I think having a goal about I want to make this amount of money, or I want to be this position or that position, I think soon enough people will find that this model is no longer workable, because the younger generation are no longer motivated by just one goal, but we wanted to find our purpose in life. And once you find your purpose in life, and everything you do, it comes not from a struggle, not from that you don't meet the goal, hence you want to be there, but it finds that it's a calling and it's something that motivates you and keeps you going, right? And also, I think for me, parts of dealing the challenge about my social image is very much about communication, right? So whether people think it's great or they think it's really not something that they want to talk about, it's a great to have a conversation, right? So every time my parents say, "Oh, look at what you're doing," I think it's great for me to have a conversation with them and really understand from their perspective, because from their experience, I think the definition of success or the road to success is according to their era, right? So it's a fantastic opportunity for me to have a conversation to understand where their word is, and also to share what my perspective is. End of the day, they may still choose to believe what they believe, but at least I get a chance to communicate. And I believe, through these communication, and eventually we will come across and try to understand each other.
That's indeed very valuable advice. I think the communications part is very, very important. What about you, Laura? Because you come from significantly different background and culture from us, where perhaps we have a lot more focus on going the guaranteed track. As Asians, as East Asians in general, we are always being told to go that guaranteed track. How's it been for you?
My parents have very high expectations, so I'm the only one in my family who's been to university, and I studied accounting. The moment I joined ISAC and when I lived in Vietnam, my parents were like, "What the hell are you doing? You've thrown away your university degree." And now I'm living in Singapore. I've been in Asia now for about 6 years. And they're still a little bit like, "Okay, don't you think it's time to come home to Australia and get a real job?" But they're slowly starting to come around. So yeah, I think communication is the key thing. And at the end of the day, I think anyone around us just wants us, and especially our parents, just want us to be able to have enough income to be able to look after ourselves. So I think it's just about being able to get your social business, your social enterprise to a point at which it is actually sustainable, and you can look after yourself and your parents don't need to worry. So that has been definitely one challenge. The other key thing that's been a bit of an up and down is being able to manage work-life balance. At the end of the day, we're starting up a business, and that's really, really hard. And bring into that the fact that you're starting up a social business, and it makes it a whole lot harder, because not only do you need to know the business side of things, you also need to understand the issues you're actually impacting. So for me, it's felt like kind of doubly hard. But whenever it's tough, I think each of us in our team, we just remind ourselves why we're actually here, and get support from our mentors, from our friends, and from the community that we're actually in. And at the end of the day, we're okay.
I think when you mentioned about slightly staying, or rather when you stray slightly off the track and you feel like, what are we doing here? And I think it's probably a little difficult to always have that supercharged energy in saying, yes, this is my passion, I'm waking up, I'm going to do something today. In this perspective, I would like to ask any of you here, were there times when you felt that, well, should I be recalibrating my purpose? Is this interest still the thing for me? Not so much is, do I want to do social enterprise, but is that specific help or the specific contribution I'm giving back to society, is it still relevant? Because you might not be the one asking yourself, but the partners that you work with certainly undergo that form of identity questioning, identity crisis sometimes, right? So perhaps Can anybody share perhaps maybe from a personal anecdote, a situation where it's be yourself, or you question that purpose, or a colleague or somebody like that?
For Bisling for a long time, I keep going back to my company because this is all the background there is I have right now. For Bisling, we have served the disabled community for a long time, and it is only that quite recently that the last maybe 3 years ago, we started asking our question, this question that is it good enough that we just help the disabled group, and then there's so many other disadvantaged group that we also can reach out to, and should we then now look at our constitution and see is there any opportunity where we can just spread across and help a lot more people, and true enough there is actually room, and we started opening doors to the mental patients, and then we started bringing in the elderly into our group. Now that we have an aging population, so more and more the disadvantaged group fell from the other sectors. So with that, we evolved our social enterprises to start taking in these other groups, and we start equipping ourselves. So from then on, our beneficiary groups expanded quite significantly when we started opening our eyes that there's more to just the disabled group out there.
Does it need a system in which you regularly revisit, the purpose and the what exactly the relevance of what you're doing? So that's indeed very reassuring here. I think one of you had to say something. Yeah.
The moments that I've questioned purpose is when we haven't really hit the results we want to do on a project. So all three of us are very, very ambitious, and we want to create a lot of impact. And sometimes we'll have this massive project and we'll want to raise like millions of dollars or inspire millions of people, and we don't quite hit those targets, and that's kind of like, it makes us question, are we doing this right? Do we need to tweak our model? Like, again, do we need to change the way we do things? And I've come to realize that yeah, maybe we do, but also maybe we just need to be not so hard on ourselves and just understand this actually is a process, and we're learning, and maybe we don't need to create all of the impact we want right now, but over time we're going to learn more and more about these issues, and we're going to refine our process more and more, and we will be able to create greater impact as we go along this journey.
And this next question is about, in terms of the shifting nature of problems that we face in the world, because we all know that Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, traditionally they did malaria, now they're moving on to like the condom issue in developing nations. So when we look at how different situations arrive, do any of you feel like there is a next? And this question is more about what your personal belief is or what your personal opinion is. What are the next few things that we could really look about? What are the next few social causes that we want to talk about, but it's not being dealt enough? So, from your own experience, what could be any of this? Does anyone care to share?
Maybe I go first. Okay, from my sort of field, and I feel talent is definitely the biggest challenge to create social change, right? I think in Singapore alone, I think you still see that all the non-profits come to me to say it's really difficult to attract a great talent, be it run the operation or serve the beneficiaries, right? So you also see government will try to more and more encourage people to become social workers, to become volunteers to take care of the elderly, because the aging society, we need much more social workers, but where are all these social workers from, right? So if everybody joins bank, joins big profession, and at the same time the foreign workers, you just couldn't keep bringing foreign workers, right? So who are going to serve in the non-profits, or who are going to run the non-profits? I think talent is definitely the biggest gap, right? And I think it's a structural issue. Either the nonprofit would start, by paying a bit better to attract more talent, having define the career paths, and also, we together build this purpose-driven career paths. And otherwise, I think we can set up many organizations to tackle change, but if we don't have the people, we don't have the talents, we don't have the youth who join to make the change, and I think it's really hard to sustain or to effect the change.
You have mentioned about talent from the staffing point of view. Let me mention it from the beneficiaries' point of view. Technology change, trend changes are sometimes too fast for the beneficiary to keep up. So very often the people whom you want to benefit, like especially in our program where we want to employ them, keep them in employment, they're sometimes not ready enough to even fit into any of our businesses. For example, IT, we have a data center. Majority of our beneficiaries are at the lower end of the IT savviness. They probably can only do very simple data entry. But nowadays, you have the internet savvy requirements, that they are not even up there. So there's always this big gap that we have to chase after. And in fact, one of our project, we are a victim of technology change. Remember last time we used to travel using manual air tickets? One of our projects is actually processing of the SIA manual air tickets in our back end and the backyard, and then we process already, then we send it back to SIA, and then they start billing people, the other different airlines. These are all gone, and a good 10 to 15 beneficiaries working on this project suddenly lost their job overnight. So in our various social enterprise business unit, we are struggling to keep up with all these changes. The cleaning department is also another one. Right now, I think if you have read the papers, the requirements that the government is setting in order to curb foreign workers from coming in to snatch away their rice bowl. So now everybody has to lift up their benchmark, their standards. And imagine some of our cleaners are IDs, intellectually disabled. How to study for WSQ? How to pass an exam for them? So it's a real challenge for some of our people from the beneficiaries' point of view.
You mentioned that even from a political perspective, whenever they serve to help the interests of one group, they end up compromising on another, and it just shows that sometimes you're caught in the unfortunate zone where they're affecting you. Perhaps could you all share if it is because Singapore is seen as a very efficient machine in terms of churning out laws and then taking out the old ones. Are there certain laws or certain regulations you all feel that would be really beneficial if enacted or changed? Not so much the specific ones, but certain regimes, certain things, certain rigidities that need to be removed, red tape, whatsoever it is. It's pretty good if you all don't have anything. So it means that certain things are going on. But personally, I feel like we have more of a social stigma to these things, in the sense that we believe that these things have a lot of red tape in general. We believe that very often you attempting to do social work will end up meeting a lot of red tape. That's from my personal perspective. Maybe could you all share then from you mentioned talent and she mentioned technology, right? Perhaps could you all share, when it comes to this talent, right, when you're talking about recruitment, if not the best talent to get, what is the acceptable strategy then? What can you settle for in terms of getting these people into your organization?
One of the things that we try to overcome is through machines. Imagine my packing line. What we used to all our shelter workshop, we do a lot of letter shopping, and we pack things into boxes, or we put newsletters into envelopes or with full letters. In
我特意回去给你
commercial
拿。
companies, it's all done by machine. We cannot beat them. So we decided that it's either we better find jobs for our people and then we buy the machine, we upscale them and then get still be in the race for such kind of projects, or we really going to just lose everything. So we bought machines. And then like the cleaning team, instead of just manually washing, we invest in scrubbing machines, heavy duty washing machines. So we have to up the standards so that we still can do the same job but maybe with lesser people and then with more machines and do it faster.
Do you all receive grants for these machines? Or?
We can get grants, yes.
So is the funding generally adequate for these kinds of things? Because in the corporate world there are a huge number of grants, right? Tax rebates, all that. But what about the funding regime of social enterprise?
Under the BWOs we do, but I think there's also the PIC that the other
Innovation credit. So those, yeah, Peter, go ahead.
I think maybe back to the question about government. I generally think government is doing a great job in even promoting social entrepreneurship, right? I think if you want to start a social enterprise, you want grants, and I think that, you want to help to get a mentor, get a space, and etc. There are various mechanisms for you to do so. So I think perhaps if I would say one thing that the government could do better with is to create more awareness of the social issues. I think we all think Singapore don't have social issues. Actually, if you go to visit all the different charities, and you will be amazed about how much issues that you don't get to see on TV, you don't get to read on newspaper, etc. So just give a couple of examples. Have anybody went to this social enterprise called Dialogue in the Dark? Yeah, okay, quite a few of you, right? So I'm sure you had, end of the day, you got a chance to talk to those guides who are visually impaired or who are blind, right? So if you hear from them, they said, there'll be easily more than 10 case people who are visually impaired, right? So they don't get any opportunity. Only 300 of them get a chance to go to work, and the rest of them just stay at home and got nothing to do, right? And if you read the papers, in Singapore there are about 1 million foreign workers that are either in the construction industry, who are maids or who are offshore marine workers, right? These rights of these 1 million workers, we don't get to see them, right? But once you get to hear their story about once they get injured, that they don't even have a proper medical sort of treatment, or even we are debating, I think a couple of years back, we are debating whether we should give maids 1 day off, and all these things. And I think these are real social issues that we don't get to see from TV, from newspaper. You only get to see those when you get engaged in the community. So I think probably this is one of the things that I think government could do a bit more to expose us all to the social issues that we got to deal with together as a community.
I couldn't agree with that more, and I'd add to that to become more aware also of environmental issues. I think the only time that Singaporeans become aware that there is an environment out there is when we get haze from Indonesia, right? There's so many environmental issues throughout this region, and Singapore will be affected by these, and many of us aren't aware of it. Things like water, like deforestation, and on the social side, I'd even say health and well-being. So you asked before, what sort of issues do I think are the next things that are a serious issue? And I think those two environmental issues, and on the health and well-being side, just skyrocketing rates of obesity and even stress and happiness levels of people these days are a huge issue. So I hope that somehow younger people can become more aware of these things, and if governments and universities and business can play a part in that would be fantastic.
As you mentioned that there are a lot of problems that go under the hood, and we don't get enough coverage on these things. What would you then tell somebody who is saying, "Hey, we are in a region, or rather, we are in a specific city where we have a relatively high level of development and standard of living. why aren't we not going out to the places like West Africa or perhaps South Asia, where they have a very viscerally, obvious problem? So what would you tell them in saying, when it comes to that? Would you say, yeah, go ahead, or would you say, here are the problems that we have here? Could you share? Yes, would you tell them to go ahead and explore helping out issues in those regions, or would you say that there are more serious issues here? Because it's really hard to see that we have problems in general when in the media all you have are generally better things here, right? So what would the advice would you give, let's say, an aspiring tertiary student, something like that?
I think, okay, compared to where I'm from in China, right? I think Singapore, generally the students get a lot of exposure. You can do CIPs, you can go overseas and etc. Right? So for me, I think you can start anywhere, right? Either get involved in the community and try to do something, or when you get an opportunity, I think a lot of youth go to Cambodia, go to Vietnam, etc. So I think start from somewhere, do something, and once you get involved in the community, you have friends, and it will make you thinking. So I mean, that's what I would say about this.
We have a couple of last few questions, and perhaps this is a great time for the audience to start preparing your questions, and then once we're done, we'll move on to the floor. So perhaps the last question for all three of you would be, in terms of if there is a particular change you want to see for this for the next couple of 5 years, what thing would best help your social enterprise? What would it be? I mean, you can't say money because perhaps somebody will share what would be the best thing to be helping your social enterprise. It could be specific to your social enterprise, or it could be specific to just social causes in nature.
I think for me it's very easy. I mean, I'm consistent about talent, right? So the biggest wish is to see all of you, some of you, when I asked about how many of you want to be social entrepreneurs, I think I see a couple of hands, and I think we need a lot more social entrepreneurs from the youth, because I think the challenge that we are dealing with is phenomenal, right? It's not about a few social enterprises can solve the issue. If you think about climate change, if you think about the poverty in other countries, talk about happiness, stress, and all those. If you consider those as social issues, I think the issue are so big that just a few of the social enterprise alone we can't tackle this, and we need youth step forward and to join either as a social entrepreneur or work for a social enterprise that are trying to put your efforts to contribute into this journey. I think if we can get more and more people to be interested to join the sector, and I think that would be my biggest desire.
Okay.
I hope to see in the next 5 years that more and more corporates are more open to employing the disadvantaged people. Right now, the momentum is there, but still, maybe 10-20% of the big corporates out there who are doing it. Many companies are still shunning away from these people, like mental patients. When you talk about disabled people, straight away in their mind it's someone on a wheelchair. Actually, not really. The hearing impaired, some people are just partially visually handicapped. Some are just a bit of muscular issues, but they still can work. So just imagine if Singapore has got like 2,000 over corporates, just each of them employing two of such people. How many of them will be plugged into the society and be included? So everybody, if they play their part, I don't think I think part of the foreign workers issue will be gone.
Same as Peter for me. It's all about talent. And I think it's just hoping that the young people are aware and interested in different social and environmental issues, and that they hope to join social enterprises, or they hope to impact these issues in the future.
And I would like to thank all of you for answering my questions right now. I would like to open up questions to the floor. Is there anyone with questions that you would like for them? certainly somebody has got to be a question. All right? We have our first question.
Good afternoon to all panelists. I think I'd like to start off by inviting the audience to give them a round of applause. I think that they did a very good job sharing their experience. I had a really pleasant time listening to you. My question has to do with the theme that we have in the background there. It says Entrepreneurship 3.0, Unlimited Opportunities. And I think that when I think about social entrepreneurship, I see that all of us are different in terms of what we're passionate about. We are passionate about different causes, different social causes, but we're all united by the same desire to impact and make a positive change. I think that that's the thread that runs through all of us. My question then would be the question about scalability. I think that we covered talent, we covered technology, but I'd like to give a scenario. If I'm a social entrepreneur, if I have a social enterprise, what advice would you give me in terms of scalability?
For my case, within business, we are constantly working on building capacity and building for the future. So we do a lot of training, and not only for the staff level, but also at the beneficiary level. So every time, should there be any opportunity for a volunteer trainer to come in, or we can tap on certain funds for training, we will do so. And in fact, all our beneficiaries have got what we call individual training program. So we have milestones for them to achieve to move up their skill level. So that's one way. At staff level, we are doing the same too.
I think at the end of the day, you have two options. You can either be in a product business or you can be in a service business. Product is obviously much easier to scale. It's harder to start, go through like a beta stage and so on. But once you've got something, it's much easier to scale. And a lot of products these days are making use of tech platforms and so on. On the service side, ultimately scale is about, or is usually about the talent that you can actually have. And whether do you create something, so say you start something here in Singapore, do you then franchise that into other countries to be able to create scale quickly, in which case you need very, very good internal processes to be able to oversee those other countries, or do you hire people in other countries to slowly scale up? So, you have those two choices, but something that's been very helpful for us is a couple of mentors who always challenge us on where do we want to be in 10 years' time? Like, what's our end game for this? Do we want to be acquired by a company who's very socially minded? Or do we want to continue doing this? Do we want to stay the size that we are? Because not everybody wants to scale as well. I mean, we could stay as a 3 to 5 or even a 10-person team, kind of like a boutique social business and really enjoy ourselves. So at the end of the day, you've kind of got to work out what is it that you actually want, and then try and structure it in a way to get there. And I think mentors is a very helpful way of helping you work through this process.
I probably will step back and ask whether do you want to scale up. I mean, personal belief, I think there's two kind of area you can go, and a lot of people say if you can't scale up, it's not worth doing it, right? So that's one train of thoughts, and I think certainly those big social issues, we need social enterprise that can scale up to tackle these issues. But I also believe there are certain other non-profit or social enterprise that not necessarily require scaling. Those will be who are really working with beneficiary that you want to have the quality or the depth of those experience. And I think if you don't want to scale up, it's fine. It's not about, I had a very interesting conversation, corporates want to help a non-profit, right? They keep asking about numbers, how many more beneficiary can you help? This year you have helped 100, next year can you help 200, right? So where the social worker, she keep telling the story about this one kid, how the one kid has transformed and etc. So the person said, I'm not interested about story, I'm interested about numbers. But in certain area about personal transformation, about service and etc. is not about scaling up. I think it's about the quality and the depth of change. So I think you got to ask yourself, which route do you want to go? And I think there's nothing wrong with either route, but it's just about stepping back and to understand what your sort of passion is in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the good question.